Good afternoon, panel members of the Australian Government and the Speaker of the House. As a concerned Australian taxpayer, I would like to express my own opinion on how the basis of the financial budget allocation towards the Australian defence capabilities are a complete waste of time, resources, and especially money, particularly in regard to the acquisition of nuclear submarines. That's right, nuclear submarines. As a peaceful and generous, democratic, first world continent, why do we even need to consider resorting to this aggressiveness and savagery of war? It is downright overkill. And while national security concerns play a significant role in reshaping the border control over the Indo Pacific region, it is still unequivocally imperative to examine whether diverting a substantial amount of funds towards this long-term approach is really necessary for the greater good of Australian society. And the short answer is no. That is because this approach, this exorbitant $368 billion submarine scheme, is not beneficial for us as Australian taxpayers, but rather detrimental to us, since it generates more complications than solutions. For instance, if the government spends excessive amounts of money on submarines in which there is high demand with limited supply in the economy, then it will cause prices to increase and therefore produce inflation in our country. However, to mitigate inflation, the government will need to offset it by raising tax in order to prevent and restrain us from enjoying the luxury of spending on what we want to spend and when we want to spend. It's it's as if we are imprisoned in an insufferable cage of a money-hungry world that knows no bounds and consideration. And the worst part is that this can continue until the nuclear submarines are delivered to Australia, which can take several decades. This goes to show that Australia is becoming more aggressive, even just as aggressive as the United States foreign policy, since they have been partnered up alongside with the United Kingdom as well in order to establish a security agreements pact, which is referred to as AUKUS. And the main objective of AUKUS is to assist Australia with nuclear powered submarines against rival countries over the Indo Pacific region. Now, that may sound reassuring in our perspective, but what about them? How would the rivals perceive three superpowered countries in alliance? A deterrent or a threat? I think the latter, especially towards China, since they are renowned for having the largest naval fleet in the world and are most involved in the battle for the Pacific, as they are protecting their sea lane, which governs a third of the global shipping. And therefore, it is not wise to start picking fights, as it will do more harm than good. However, our taxpayers' money does not have to go to waste. Instead of financially supporting the biggest single investment in Australia's defence capabilities in our history, the $368 billion fund could be better spent elsewhere, such as medical services like public hospitals and schools, and even work opportunities like JobSeeker, while also distributing a fair amount to Australia's military defence. Now, to reiterate, Australia is a docile nation with good relations with the international community and should not deviate to a destructive approach which will ultimately end in a disastrous event between us and China. Nuclear submarines are an act of war, not an act of peace. Furthermore, as the government increases inflation due to enormous spendings, they will have to counteract by increasing taxes and therefore hinders us from spending of our own free will. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you all for listening.